There was a fire at my parents' home. There was a fire at the property that we were purchasing in Bayswater. And there was about to be a fire in the car, so...
In which you were sitting?
Yes.
They said all you need is love, but for some people money comes first. You won't believe how these villains tried to get away with murdering their lovers for cash. In the year 2000, the body of a pregnant woman was found abandoned in the Nevada desert. Her body was riddled with bullet holes and had been horrifically mutilated and left to rot for over a month. But who was this woman and who was responsible for her death? The truth will turn your stomach.
When you have someone that takes their time to mutilate a body afterwards, I believe it's a display of a lot of hatred for that person.
Upon further inspection, investigators discovered that the victim had been pregnant for several months at the time of her murder. The fetus, however, was missing, along with the woman's entire uterus. Both had been crudely removed by whoever was responsible for her death. Her hair had been scalped, and she had acid thrown in her face. After lying in the desert for a month, the body was also heavily decomposed and had been partially ripped apart by wild animals. Another strange clue was also left at the scene. Bizarrely, the body had also been littered with Monopoly money, with cryptic notes written on it saying NOW and ZOG. Police quickly linked the lettering to two white supremacist groups, the New World Order and Zionist-occupied government, and began considering a racist motive in the murder. Dental records identified the body as Alice Sin, a 21-year-old Chinese immigrant who lived in California, 200 miles away from where her body was found. She and her boyfriend had a son together, and she had been taking classes at a community college before her death. Her 28-year-old boyfriend Raymond Wong had reported her missing not long after her disappearance. However, family and friends didn't understand why Alice had disappeared, as it was extremely out of character. They couldn't believe she would simply leave without a warning, leaving the baby in Raymond's care. Wong was a college graduate who was doing well for himself. He owned a couple of homes and lived a comfortable life. His parents had immigrated to the US from Hong Kong. The couple had started dating while Alice was studying, but police soon began to suspect that Raymond was hiding something. Before Alice's body was even discovered, investigators had questioned Raymond and even given him a polygraph test. They soon discovered that he had been having an affair with another woman, Jessica Tang, who was also pregnant with his child. Two women had reportedly been fighting over Wong. The result of Raymond's polygraph tests were officially inconclusive, but suggested that he was hiding information from the investigators.
Close your eyes and relax and just be comfortable. Do you know what happened to Alice?
No.
Are you lying about what happened to Alice?
No.
More of Wong's behavior also concerned police. Immediately after her disappearance, his other girlfriend Tang had moved in with him. The new couple had quickly removed all of Alice's clothes and stored them in the garage long before her body was even discovered. It seemed as though the couple was sure that Alice wasn't coming back anytime soon. The final straw came when police discovered that Wong had been made the beneficiary of a $2 million life insurance policy that Alice had taken out 1 month before her death. Investigators now had enough reason for suspicion to search Wong's home, and although they found no evidence linking him to Alice's murder, what they did find was even more shocking. Police discovered a huge collection of disturbing sexual content in Wong's home, including child pornography and snuff films. Thousands of hours worth of footage were retrieved of a woman being tortured, assaulted, and killed. He was arrested and convicted in 2001 on charges related to child pornography and spent 2 years behind bars. However, police failed to find any evidence linking Raymond to his girlfriend's murder. Was it possible the racist groups were behind Alice's death after all? On his release from prison, Raymond fled to China, failing to register as a sex offender before he left. He stayed in China for 3.5 years and could have stayed out of reach of American police for the rest of his life. However, in a bizarre twist, Wong approached the CIA and FBI, offering his services as an international spy.
He had approached the CIA and the FBI in Beijing, offering to work as a spy for the United States. They sort of hoodwinked Raymond and told him, "Oh, we'd love to work with you."
Raymond was tricked into returning to the U.S. by investigators who told him that they were interested in using him to spy on China. He was arrested as soon as he returned to the U.S. for failing to register as a sex offender, the only crime they could use against him at the time. They now had a second shot at prosecuting Wong, but the final piece of evidence they needed was still missing. The breakthrough came after police questioned the third member of Wong's love triangle, Jessica Tang. His former girlfriend had been left behind in the U.S. after Wong fled the country. Tang told police that on the night of Sin's murder, she had helped to lure her to the desert. Investigators discovered that Wong told both women that night that he was going to murder the other. Before before driving them both into the desert in Nevada. Raymond told Alice that they were going to take Jessica into the desert to kill her. When they arrived, however, it was soon clear that she was the real target. According to Tang, Raymond and Alice got out of the car, leaving her alone. Raymond and Alice went towards the trunk of the car. Suddenly, she heard a gunshot, followed by the sound of Alice hitting the ground. Jessica told police that after Wong shot Sin, he forced her to fire at the body as well. It was after this that Raymond began acting out his twisted snuff fantasies, mutilating Alice's body and framing white supremacist groups before driving back to California. Tang's confession was enough for police to file charges against Wong, and in 2011, for a decade after Alice's death, he was finally arrested on suspicion of murder.
You're under arrest for the murder of Alice Sin.
Stand up, turn around, put your hands behind your back.
Despite his arrest, Wong continued to show his arrogance, failing to notice the severity of his situation.
I drove him out to county jail. Halfway out there, he said, hey, when all this is over and I'm out, we should go get a beer together. And I said, no, I don't think I'd like to hang out with you.
Tang was also charged. She later pleaded guilty to accessory to murder and received a sentence of 5 years probation, 500 hours of community service. Wong's trial began in 2015. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to 50 years to life. Later attempts to appeal his conviction were unsuccessful. Raymond Wong was able to use his intelligence to manipulate those around him, but his arrogance ultimately led to his downfall. In the end, his former lover's testimony was all investigators needed to discover the truth. Despite being delayed for a decade, justice was finally served. Should Wong have been convicted sooner? Did Jessica receive an adequate sentence for her involvement? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Our second case began in Scotland in 1994 when Claire Morris tragically died in a car accident after her vehicle caught fire and exploded in Aberdeenshire, or so it seemed. Her husband, Malcolm Webster, had been driving the car at the time and told investigators he had to swerve out of the way of an oncoming motorcyclist coming at him in the wrong lane. Webster spent a week in hospital after the incident, but was deemed to be largely uninjured by hospital staff. Despite his lucky escape, Webster was seen wearing a neck brace at his wife's funeral. Family members reportedly saw Webster weeping during the service, unable to deal with the grief of his wife's tragic passing. After Claire's death, Webster received a £200,000 life insurance payout, but certain oddities surrounding Claire's death led to further investigations. One police officer began asking questions as Malcolm couldn't explain why Claire was unable to escape the burning car before it exploded. The car also seemed to have been traveling slowly. No skid marks were present at the scene of the collision. Firemen shared similar concerns, unable to explain why Webster was unable to pull his wife from the burning vehicle. A friend of Claire's also told authorities that the couple had been in a similar accident some months earlier. Webster had driven the car into a ditch, but both he and his passenger Claire were unharmed. Despite some mysterious circumstances, Claire's untimely death was seen as an accident and the investigation was dropped. Her family supported Webster, who had lost his wife just 8 months into their marriage. Webster cheered himself up by spending all of the life insurance money within 6 months, splashing out on luxury goods such as a yacht and a Range Rover. Not long after, Webster began a relationship with Geraldine Oakley, a staff member at the hospital where he worked as a nurse. She later told investigators that she became suspicious of Webster after he began regularly asking about whether an autopsy would be carried out on Claire. She also claimed that he told her that he was epileptic and took medication for the condition. In 1995, Webster was living in Saudi Arabia when he began a brief relationship with Brenda Grant. She later told authorities that Webster routinely offered her drugs and told her he was being treated for leukemia back in the UK. In 1997, Webster was living in New Zealand when he married oncology nurse Felicity Drumm. The couple had a son together, but Felicity would later accuse him of attempting to kill her in 1999. During their short marriage, Felicity reported waking up after sleeping for entire days after consuming drinks prepared by Webster. She was also caught in 3 house fires, prompting her to consider purchasing life insurance. Webster also told Drumm he had heart problems and cancer.
When Felicity married Malcolm, they pledged till death do us part. Little did Felicity know Malcolm was plotting her death on their honeymoon.
February 1999, Webster was driving with Drumm in the passenger seat when he lost control of the car. Drumm quickly grabbed the steering wheel, found it was functioning properly. Before the car crashed into a ditch, Webster demanded she stay in the car while he went to the trunk. Thankfully, Drumm was able to sense something was wrong and fled the scene. She discovered the same day that her husband had cleared out 140,000 New Zealand dollars from a joint bank account. Webster told her he had a heart attack the same day. Drumm was now certain that her husband was trying to kill her. After she contacted authorities, Webster was charged with arson, supplying illegal drugs, and disabling a victim. Webster fled the country before police could arrest him, returning to the UK.
I have spent at different times a lot of time agonising over what was real and what wasn't. Did I ever mean anything to him? Was I purely a meal ticket right from the start?
Webster started several more relationships when he returned home to the UK, telling partners that he had cancer and was relying on them financially. He even manipulated 2 women into making him a beneficiary in their wills. Many of Webster's former lovers say that he had generally treated them very well. He would write loving cards and buy them gifts and flowers. Webster was able to give his targets a false sense of security so that he would never be suspected of trying to kill them. Simone Banerjee received a warning letter from police revealing Webster's suspicious past, as well as his wife and son in New Zealand.
And also warned me that my life would be in danger should I wish to continue my relationship with Malcolm. I thought it was complete nonsense. I'd never heard such a load of bunkum in the whole of my life. This could not be the Malcolm Webster that I knew and loved.
She eventually left him before he was able to marry her. An avid amateur sailor, Banerjee later told police she had discovered her life jacket had been damaged before a sailing trip with Webster. Webster had been on the police's radar since Claire's death, but never had enough evidence to prosecute him. In 2007, however, police seized a stolen laptop and an unlicensed gun during a search. The finds reopened the investigation into Claire's death, while New Zealand police looked into the crash involving Drumm.
We strongly believed it was murder. We couldn't show that, even though the circumstances were striking between what happened in New Zealand and what happened to Claire Morris.
In 2009, Malcolm Webster was charged with the murder of Claire Morris, the attempted murder of Felicity Drumm, and attempting to bigamously marry Simone Banerjee to gain access to her estate. In total, 1,000 people were interviewed by police in an attempt to build a case up against him. It was decided in court that Webster had drugged his first wife Claire before deliberately crashing his car. He then used petrol to start a fire at the crash site, leaving his wife inside to burn to death.
He had a very good sense of humour. He could be very personable, very attentive. I think that one of his skills and one of the reasons for such success that he's had is that he makes a study of the people he's around, establishes what their interests are, and then adopts them.
It was concluded that Webster had been able to use his charisma to seduce and manipulate women to benefit himself financially. The extent of his dishonesty was also examined, with numerous illnesses and treatments all being false. He had even shaved off his hair and eyebrows at one point to make chemotherapy treatment. Webster will have to spend 30 years behind bars before he is eligible for parole, one of the toughest sentences ever imposed in Scotland.
This is the man convicted of murdering his first wife and attempting to kill his second in staged car crashes. It was part of a plot to pocket almost £1 million in insurance payouts.
Now known by his nickname, the Black Widower, Webster's calculated crimes and a lack of remorse is enough to make anyone's skin crawl. It took 17 years to bring him to justice, with many prosecutors thankful that he was unable to kill again. Since being locked up, Webster has reportedly told other inmates he expects to die in prison and has apparently hired a convicted child molester to protect him after being attacked by another inmate with a metal pole. Our third and final case may be the most shocking of them all. You won't believe how this one ends. On November 3rd, 2013, beloved local firefighter William Walker was returning home when he was shot 4 times outside of his house in Cleveland. When paramedics arrived, Walker was still clinging to life despite having 4 gunshot wounds in his chest. He described the attacker the best he could in his final moments before passing away.
The evidence suggests that this was a hit on Mr. Walker. There was no evidence of a robbery that had occurred.
Walker and his wife, Uloma Walker Curry, had been packing to move houses on the night he was killed. The couple had decided to get some fast food that night. Walker was returning to the house with dinner when he was ambushed. The couple had been married for just 4 months when Walker's life was stolen from him. As well as his wife, Walker left behind 2 kids from a previous marriage.
My father did not deserve this at all. He was such a great man, a great role model to so many people in Cleveland.
Police were initially stumped. Why would anyone want to kill a 45-year-old firefighter? The murder shocked the community as people came together to assist in the investigation.
Frances Russell, better known as Mama Frances on Lamson Road, has so much seniority and respect here that she's confronting suspected drug dealers herself, hoping to find out who killed her neighbor, William Walker.
They all liked the guy. They spoke to him and went about the business.
Didn't take them long, however, to notice that Uloma's behavior was odd. Her response on the night of the shooting did not quite match that of a distraught wife. Police quickly started interviewing those who knew the family, looking for potential suspects. One name kept coming up: Chad Paget. 20-year-old Chad was dating Uloma's 17-year-old daughter, Jacqueline, but he was also known to have friends that were often getting into trouble. One of his contacts was 24-year-old Ryan Doherty, local troublemaker who was known to police. Police began to search through Chad's phone records and soon had enough evidence to arrest and question him. Chad told police that the shooter was Ryan Doherty, an associate of Chad's cousin Christopher Hine. Together, the three men had conspired together to murder Walker, but why? Facing life behind bars, the three young men revealed everything. They had been approached by Uloma, who paid Chad $1,000 to find someone who could kill her husband. The discovery shocked the family and everyone who knew them.
We have known Loma Curry for 8 years. Her and my dad were together. And so she was like a second mom to my brother and I. And so we are just shocked and distraught.
Chad had initially approached his 20-year-old cousin Chris Hine, who failed to kill Walker on a different occasion. Hine then went to Doherty, who pulled the trigger on the night of Walker's death. Finding the truth only uncovered more questions for police. Why would Uloma want her husband dead just 4 months after marrying him? Further investigations revealed that Uloma was nearing financial ruin after accumulating tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt. In a desperate attempt to make money, the 45-year-old woman approached her teenage daughter to help organize her husband's murder. Uloma was hoping to receive a massive life insurance payout, but failed to realize that her husband hadn't yet changed the beneficiary on the policy from his ex-wife's name to hers. Not only did she not receive any of the money, but was now also charged with murder and facing life behind bars. William Walker's life was taken for no reason other than greed and represents another example of a good person being manipulated and killed by someone who was meant to love them.
Just wanted to just let everybody know how close William was with his children, and it's a huge loss for our family. It's a huge loss.
Loma Walker Curry was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2017. As for Hine, Paget, and Doherty, they received 18, 28, and 23 years as part of a plea deal after testifying against Uloma. Which case was harder to believe? Do you think these killers will ever get out of prison? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe for more.